Theophano Foundation. Your large presence indicates to me that the openness of mind and the European spirit is still very much alive in Thessaloniki. Thank you for coming. The purpose of our meeting is entirely related to the objectives of the Theophano Foundation, established in this town 3 years ago. It's bridging the various parts of Europe, the north and the south, the east and the west, building dialogues and building togetherness among Europeans. We want to play a role in the inclusiveness of our common civilization, our social values, and our well-being. Yesterday, we had a magnificent ceremony in the Grand Rotunda. You can see it on YouTube if you missed it. The second Theophano Prize was given in the presence of Her Excellency, the President of Greece, to Dr. Salin and Dr. Turesi, the people who liberated us by inventing a vaccine against the coronavirus. I think you deserve an applause for that. They have shown what is important to all of us in this audience: scientific excellence and humanistic feeling. And that's the result from which we benefit now. Today, we will have less of a ceremony. We will actually engage in discussion with the two prize winners, with 4 eminent scientists from different scientific fields than yours. We will cross-fertilize ideas between your sciences and their sciences. And these prominent thinkers, together with the prize winners, will open with us a discussion about the role of science in modern society, how much science can contribute to our well-being. Sometimes one hears criticism about perhaps some negative collateral effects of science, but then these negative effects can only be solved by science in its turn. So we will look at different perspectives of that role. Before I give the floor to a keynote speech of you two, in whatever order, I give the floor to the Commissioner, Mr. Ginas, who has given us the honor to be present here on behalf of the European Commission. The floor is yours.
Dear President Van Rompuy, dear Herman, dear President and members of the Advisory Council of the Theophano Prize, let me first apologize for the weather. This is the only part which is not at the level of the expectations we can offer from this city. You would allow me to speak in my mother tongue. Πριν ένα χρόνο, φίλες και φίλοι, κύριε Υπουργέ, κύριε Δήμαρχε,
Mr. Minister, Mayor, Rector, a year ago I had the privilege to attend the awarding ceremony of Theophano Prize and to presented to the European Commission for the Erasmus program, which shows the mutual understanding and mobility of Europeans. These are the pillars of European Union. So last year's prize was an utmost honor for one of the longest programs of the European Union. That was the best way to start the Theophano Prize to start. Today, I am particularly happy because I come back to my birthplace, my beloved Thessaloniki, to open this round table on this current topic of securing future well-being through science. With the participation of Dr. Ugur Sahin and Eslem Tureci, the two laureates of this year's Theophano Prize, two scientists that worked hard in order to help us escape from the unprecedented crisis we have been experiencing for the last 18 months. It is not accidental that the first two Theophano Prizes were given to education and science. These are the two fields that were chosen last year and this year. This tells us a lot, both about the prize and our society. Science is the most important field at crisis times. Those of us who are committed to serve society, the best weapon we have in our hands is to use science in order to overcome the challenges of our times. Demographics, climate change, digital transformation, health crisis. In the recent speech made by President von der Leyen, she said the following: every time that we can't believe in our eyes, the only thing that is sufficient and adequate to do is to listen to what science has to say. This is true for climate change. It is also true for the multiple changes that algorithm revolution will bring. But the sector in which science is catalytic is the COVID-19 pandemic, and it has a lot of lessons to offer us. These are the experiences I'd like to share with you this evening. Let us all remember how everything started in the second semester of 2020. That was a nightmare scenario. Before that, the politicians, both at European and national level, had to understand and anticipate how a disease with these characteristics would spread and how we could restrict the virus. It was the time for specialists, epidemiologists, and infectionists to speak. We opened the political halls to those who knew and served and offered. It was also the time for researchers who developed the test to diagnose the disease, and of course our pioneers who are here. From the very beginning of the crisis, however, we realized that even these fields and sectors of the specialists on their own could not be successful enough in order to give us the policies needed. We also needed our social scientists because they helped us understand how, why, and when people change attitude and behavior, and they can accept the protected measures against coronavirus. We needed the economists who helped us understand the economic consequences of the pandemic, allowing governments to anticipate what would happen in their logistics and to pave the way for the post-pandemic era. And finally, we had the production engineers because they were the only ones who could link vaccination research with their production lines. But despite this multiple support offered by specialists, unfortunately, we have found ourselves facing anti-popular, anti-scientist challenges, campaigns of misinformation and of false news. We're still facing all these. Our struggle against this front of insanity keeps on and will keep on. And if there is one lesson that we should keep in mind out of all these things that we have experienced, is that if today we come back to some form of normality, this is not the result of a regulatory decision that is simply implemented in a blind manner, but it is due to the fast development of effective, innovative vaccines and the dedication and devotion and struggle by scientists like Sahin Turechi and other scientific fields, thanks to which we can see a way out of the crisis. Just like scientists support politicians, in the same way, politicians themselves should support scientists without pretexts. This is what we have done in the European Union. Last year, we believed in science at a time when we didn't know at that time what science could offer and give us. Last summer, we received tens of proposals by companies saying that they develop vaccines at a time when the question marks were more than the answers given for the development of vaccines. We took the responsibility to select 7 companies and pre-purchase vaccines from these companies for all European citizens, simply because we believed in science. 6 out of 7 companies did not let us down. It was a European leap of faith that was successful. Europe believed and Europe succeeded. First of all, thanks to financing, not financing the market for supplying vaccines, but also research and innovation. For example, in the past years, we have been supporting BioNTech and other vaccine producers with funds, and we have the biggest program for research and innovation with budget of 96 billion euros called Horizon. But we also need the exchange of scientific knowledge, and this is what we are doing through the exchange of free movement of knowledge and scientists, supporting scientific research throughout the European Union. And what's more, we are doing something else. We are building the new architecture for a European Union of health that will be protecting us from similar health threats before they even come up. A few days ago, we proposed a new authority that would be able to respond to health emergencies with the name HIT. And we also supported and proposed the support of the powers for ECDC and the European Pharmaceutical Organization. This new architecture of health union would be our best shield for the future. What's more, we should cultivate the interest to knowledge and education from the very first steps. Schools and universities play a catalytic role. This is exactly what we're trying to achieve through the new European program that wants to create a new educational area by 2025 and the European alliances among universities. And I'm really happy that the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki has been participating in these European alliances. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, beating COVID-19 was not and is not an end to itself. What we should do right now is to repeat this successful approach in treating other forthcoming challenges in the health sector. There is no other tool, no better tool than science itself. We are committed to science, science serving a Europe that protects, a science that gives opportunities to the new generations of scientists. I would like to conclude my greeting by repeating our warmest and sincerest words of praise to Dr. Sahin and Tureci for their huge offer to humanity. The dedication of these two scientists in promoting the fast development of biotech Pfizer vaccine gave our lives back. They allowed us to meet again, to chat, discuss, and exchange points of view as we're doing today. But there is one more message for our dear laureates. Dr. Sahin and Tureci are the landmark of the multicultural value of Europe. A Europe that generously provides opportunities to all. A Europe where what is important is not where you come from, but what is important is where you want to go and how you can help those near you. With these joint experiences and great achievements, we can definitely look forward to our lives for a better European future. We are thankful and grateful to you for giving us our prosperity and health. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Kinas, you rightly emphasized the role of these scientists and others. You rightly emphasized the role of BioNTech, Pfizer, and business. You were perhaps a little modest on the role of the Commission itself. I think that the Commission has not only just put forward large recovery funds, it has also shown leadership. And I think that in this crisis, this was something which was much needed as well. And the Commission should be commended for that. Thank you, Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, now I give the floor to this wonderful couple.
Thank you, Stefan. May I
Yep.
stay here? Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen, a couple days ago, a journalist asked me, do you consider it a miracle that you and your partners developed a vaccine against this novel virus during the pandemic in such a short time with such high efficacy and were able to supply the vaccine to more than 1 billion doses of vaccines? And the correct answer as a scientist would be no. Miracles don't exist, but something in my heart said, yes, it is a miracle. And because the likelihood that this is going to happen was extremely low. But as a scientist, of course, you try to understand how things which are unlikely happen. Because if you understand how the stars were aligned to make this possible, you may come up with a situation that could allow us, yeah, to repeat this performance in a next situation, crisis situation. So I tried to understand what did we learn from the way how this success was accomplished, and what could be the consequences of this learning. And to be honest, I am not done. So with some of the statements that I'm making here, in a few years or in a few weeks, I could say, I have another opinion now. Yeah? So it is an ongoing process, but I think this is the function of a roundtable, to discuss the ideas and to come to conclusions. So the first learning is it showed us this crisis, and the solution showed us how important science is. So science was a marginal part of our society, and now it ended up in the center of the society. And there is now the awareness of how important science is, how important the investment into science is. So our early research in the universities benefited from funding from the German funding agencies, by the European funding agencies, by the framework programs, by the Horizon program. And later on, we benefited when we started our companies from private investors. With regard to private investors, Europe is still weak as compared to the US. So one of the learnings should be, or one of the questions should be, how can we encourage private investors and other investors to invest into new technology, even it is early, even it's not proven. What is also important is that the scientific community and all the stakeholders contributed in a wonderful fashion. So this was technology. The collaboration with Pfizer brought together best performing clinical trials and the know-how for vaccine development. We agreed from the very beginning to be guided by science and by data. And more, we published and made the data in a transparent fashion available. And the media helped us to distribute that so that people were informed. In August 2020, that was after we have started our phase 3 clinical trial, most people said, we would not take an mRNA vaccine. This is an unproven technology. We would stay with the traditional technologies. And in March 2021, everyone wanted to have an mRNA vaccine and didn't want to get the traditional vaccines. So that means the education of the public can happen extremely fast, if it's supported by information and media and journalists who do their work. And we should be optimistic, even though we are talking about the vaccine skepticism. We should be also confident and understand that in principle the system works. So the scientific approach, where you provide the information, where people and experts have these debates, and data are controlled by different means. So our data were controlled by real-world studies and were confirmed. And some data were not confirmed, and this is the scientific way, and it should provide us confidence. The question is, can we generate the same type of knowledge? So today in Germany, I say more people understand mRNA than the offside rules in soccer, and which just shows us that education works. And so the question is, can we educate the population for upcoming crises? So can we provide really more detailed information, for example, for climate crisis? Not just information that climate crisis is happening, but really coming up with detailed information so that people are more educated. I'm missing that. I'm listening that we are running into problems. I'm hearing that experts are saying something, but I'm not getting the detailed information. And I think we should try to teach the population so that they can understand. The second learning is it showed us that people and organizations working together for a common goal could become extremely effective. So our collaboration with Pfizer started a few weeks after a phone call. Usually you need a contract to start the collaboration. Usually this takes about 9 to 12 months. So after 3 weeks, we had an agreement, started this collaboration, and it was based on old values. It was not based on control and who is the more powerful and who has the better ego. Yeah? It was based on trust. It was on leadership. So the leadership showed the team, we are working together, and it does not matter whether it is Pfizer or BioNTech, we are really trying to follow the rules of science. It is a perfect collaboration because we contributed in a different manner together to the solution with shared values. So the question is, how can we shape the industry and all stakeholders, and encourage such collaborations based on trust and pragmatism? So to give you an example, if a company like ours, BioNTech, wants to start a collaboration with an academic institution, it takes about 6 months until we have a contract, material transfer agreement with a academic institution. Is that meaningful? Why is it not possible to start earlier? Why things are complicated? Why institutions are kept in silos? Yeah? And can we enable a better spread of science between institutions, between companies, and foster collaboration? The third thing is what we learned is that single individuals and organizations can make a difference at global scale. So one of the challenges that we had is to mobilize our team. In a situation where no one thought that this is going to become a pandemic, but we were able to mobilize our team. And I can tell you, I can give you 5 or 6 examples how individual team members really made a difference for the success of this project, so that we can say that without this team member, we would not be able to select the right candidate and so on. Yeah? And of course, we put a lot of pressure on our team. And I felt guilty at this, after we accomplished this, and went to the team and asked them how they feel, because they work 24/7. And what surprised me is everyone was happy. So everyone told me that was the best time in his life to work and to contribute to this purpose. Yeah? And the question is, can we find a way to let people, not only in company and in institutions, but in our society, to contribute to what we want to accomplish? Because I strongly believe that letting people contribute for a purpose creates a situation of solidarity. Solidarity is not the starting, it's more the results of contributing. Yeah? And Kennedy is often cited that you should not ask what America can do for you, but what you can do for America. But I think the right question is not to ask the people what they can do for us, but really come up with a question, how can we enable people to contribute to what we want to achieve at a broader scale? And this is not a theoretical or philosophical question, this is really a question which requires discussion and answers. The last thing is of course what we learned is how important health is. So we of course want to be efficient in our economy, we want to be successful, but if it comes to health, everything stops. So if we now realize how important health is, should we not ask, are we doing enough for health? Is it really enough? Are we happy with the system, how it exists? The collaboration with the authorities, with the regulatory authorities, showed us how drug development can how fast drug development can happen if everything works together and the bureaucracy is forgotten. Yeah? So in the last 2 years, more people died with cancer than people died with the coronavirus. My feeling is when it comes to cancer drug development, it is just the old traditional bureaucratic way. So when I remember when we submit our COVID-19 trial results and applications, within a few days we got a response. When I today send an application for a cancer trial, we have to wait about 3 to 6 months before something happens. Yeah? Is it really right to accept that the system is in this mode where everything is addressed in a bureaucratic way? And can we come up with better solutions? So if you, for example, see computer programmers, you can make a program which is very long, but a good programmer will show you that you can accomplish the same with a few lines of code. If we can accomplish the same by doing less, why don't we ask how this could be accomplished? So these are the 4 learnings and questions that I have, and I hope this stimulates a little bit the discussion here. And again, these are my current opinions. They might change with time.
Thank you very much. Don't worry about changing opinion. The famous Swiss artist Francis Picabia has said, our head is round, so that our thoughts can change direction. I think you gave us several very, very important pieces of advice. And I'm sure that all the decision makers in this room will take them home. And we make sure that they will get the little booklet of this round table where they are repeated. We will now move on, and we will now start looking at the role of science from other perspectives. But you will notice that when the other speakers give their opinion, each time we come close to what you said. There is an interrelation, there is a cross-fertilization. And that is one of the strengths in our European civilization and in the work of the Theo Funner Foundation. First of all, I'd like to give the floor to Mary McAleese. She is the former president of Ireland. She engaged in this Greek foundation with great enthusiasm. She's now also a professor of law, children and religion at the University of Glasgow. So multiple perspectives, that's what we need. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome to all of you. What a great company to be in. I just feel so privileged to be in this company. But I wanted to talk about science and the common good, and if ever there were 2 exponents of, and advocates and exemplars of science and the common good, I'm sitting right beside them. Our Theophano laureates just exemplify the miracles that can happen when science is applied to the common good. Actually, Ugur, when you were talking about the question being asked of you, did you regard what you have accomplished as a miracle? What came into my mind, did any of you see the film Miracle on the Hudson, where a plane landed safely on the Hudson and no one was injured? And the captain, Chesley Sullenberger, was asked afterwards, he had 30 seconds, incidentally, to decide what to do and to do it. And he was asked, did he pray? And he said, no, but I hope the people down the back were doing that. And if you ask the people down the back, they would have said, yes, we prayed, but we hoped the professional up the front hadn't taken a parachute and gotten off the plane. We hoped that he was applying himself to our good, our common good. So for the last 18 months, we've been praying for the miracle that you helped to bring about, but we also knew that we needed the professionals. We needed the hands of the work. Maybe we were, to some extent, perhaps the soul of the work, but we needed the hands and the brains of the work, and that was you. It's a privilege to talk about this subject in this city, because, of course, it's the homeland of Aristotle, described, I think, by Dante as the master of those who know, one of the, well, probably the great key influencer of all time. 24 centuries since that man walked the highways and byways of this place, with his uniquely questioning, brilliant mind, opening up debates that we still have not been able to close today. Maybe we should never close them, because being open, as we've heard, to debate, being willing to change, to listen, to change, to adapt, is a very important element of the relationship between science and the common good. And it's also good that we gather not just in the name of, we gather in the homeland of, yes, of Aristotle, but also in the name of Theophano, a woman whose name needs to be known better, I think, around Europe, because she too, 1,000 years ago, gave the kind of leadership as Aristotle in his time did, and as others have done over the centuries, the kind of leadership that lifts us onto a plane where we can see things much more clearly and with much greater acuity and sensitivity to the needs of others and the needs of ourselves than sometimes we have when we're dragged down or burdened, whether it's by bad leadership or all the things that get in the way of the common good. Millions of words have been spoken about this subject, God knows. These simple questions about, what is science, what is the common good, these questions have evoked huge debate right across so many areas and so many disciplines, from zoology to ethics to the hard sciences, the soft sciences, philosophy, and still, here we are. In our time, when this time of digital wonder, and there are just so many things that we don't know, and so many things that we need to know, so many things that we want to know, that we want to penetrate in order to make our world better. Because the truth of the matter is, the common good is your good, my good. It's my children's good. It's the good of someone in our family who has cancer, and we want an answer. And we pray for an answer, and we hope that there are people, there are professionals who are committing their lives to making that answer happen. Even if they are facing blank walls, even if every morning they get up and they are not making the progress they would like to make, but still they try, knowing that one day, that eureka moment will happen, and they will be able to bring us to a new landscape of hope. I think of the appalling carnage that was inflicted human to human in our continent of Europe, particularly in 2 world wars. And I think, too, of how that propelled radical rethinking about the future of Europe and how we were going to relate to one another. Were we going to stay in perpetual enmity and perpetual war, or are we going to do something different? And I think of the men, in particular, those 4 great men, de Gasperi, Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, and Konrad Adenauer. How could I forget Konrad Adenauer? Those 4 great men who, when they were looking at Europe and saying, human beings have got to be better than this. We have to be better than this. And they cast their minds back 1,400 years, funny enough, to a fellow Irish person, to St. Columbanus, who, confronted with the mess of the fall of the Roman Empire and a Europe that was in perpetual dark age and perpetual conflict, came up with the idea of totius Europae, saying to the warring kingdoms, You know, you can be Frankish, you can be Irish, you can be Spanish, you can be Italian, you can be British, but you can work together. And when you work together for all of Europe in partnership, it is remarkable what miracles can happen. And we see around us the growing evidence of climate change, and we know that the impact of that impacts all of us, and that the common good is damaged by climate, the damage that is being done by us human beings to our climate. And we look for the application now of real human ingenuity strong enough to counter human stupidity. Now we know that science can help us to understand the problems better and find solutions. But we also know that science of its own volition cannot make the political choices, the economic choices that put the resources to the places where the professionals can make the difference between knowledge and ignorance. And that is something that we, I think, as ordinary everyday citizens, can put the pressure on to ensure that the common good, our good, the good of your family, my family, is at the heart of political decisions, economic decisions, decisions made by philanthropists, decisions made by all of us, to ensure that they are made with an ethically principled, value-laden set of perspectives that conduce to good, that do not drag us down into the mire that human beings, we well know, are capable of creating without too much effort, unfortunately. The global pandemic, as we know, has been one of those remarkable times. Actually, the pandemic has been horrible and dreadful, but one thing it has done for us, I think, it has really introduced every one of us to, in a very fresh way, to the convergence of science and the common good. And it's gripped the world's most advanced economies. Nobody was exempt. You know, you couldn't really buy your way out of exemption from the early part of COVID. It threw us into a pit of dread. We were confronted with our own human vulnerability. And many of us resorted to prayer because we knew that without science and without the professionals, we had no answers on our own. And the universality of the problem was revealed to us, that the common good means what it says. Your good, my good, the good of people who are living 10,000 miles away or 10,000 yards away. We have a common good, and that common good has to be served by science. So when in our time we raise this relationship between the science and the common good, I think we do so very differently from a year ago or 2 years ago. We have a humble and profound, fresh understanding of our great need for dedicated scientists like those honored here with the Theophano Award. When I think of what they were already doing, dedicating their lives quietly, you know, most of us had never heard these names 18 months ago, and yet they were already working for the good of humanity, particularly in the fields of oncology. But we also know that something triggered in their minds when they heard about the pandemic. We who were still thinking, oh, it'll pass by, it'll not, you know, it won't affect me, it won't affect you, it won't take off. They knew with an intuition that is born of all the work that they and the brain power they have invested in their professionalism. They knew what we couldn't see. They were ahead of us. And because they were ahead of us and because of the values they have, they gave a leadership that allowed us, well, now, to acknowledge the miracle that science was able to give us answers in a time span that is just truly remarkable. And so, honestly, if you want to know the relationship between science and the common good, we should listen to this wonderful couple. They know exactly what it means. And so as we begin to emerge from the COVID fog and see the resumption of something hopefully close to normal life, I hope that beyond, and our chairman, Herman van Rompuy, alluded to this last night at the award, I hope that it's not just about going back to where we were 18 months ago, but rather that we will have now absorbed and distilled and have a different intuition about the future and about the values and perspectives we want to see embedded in the political decisions, the economic decisions, the choices that are made at leadership level that will impact centuries to come. Aristotle told us all, you know, it's ironic, isn't it? He told us all 24 centuries ago what we should do and what we have failed to do persistently. Set your face to the common good. Set your vision to the common good. Put your shoulder to the wheel of the common good. That's how the world is going to change for the better. We lose nothing and we gain so much if we listen to those words, if we implement them. When Ugur, when you were talking about the bunkers in which, you know, politics and science and medicine still remain, and how those bunkers need to be opened, let fresh air in, the walls need to be lowered so that there is this cross-fertilization, this commonality and partnership. I was reminded, and I'll finish with this back in the 1990s, shortly after I was elected, I used to work in Trinity College in Dublin as a mere lawyer, not as a scientist. I never had that brain power, regrettably. But there was Trinity, my old university, was delighted because our geneticists in Trinity had just discovered a gene associated with a particularly horrible childhood illness. And the discovery of the gene opened up to the children and to the parents now huge, huge hope, you know, for cure, or at very least for treatment management. And the leader of the genetics team was on the radio telling how important this discovery was and what it could do. And the journalist who was asking him questions asked him a very simple question. He said, how come you discovered it now? Because he had just said that they'd spent 25 years looking for it. How come you found it now? And there was a silence for a second or two. And the professor said, well, actually, the answer to that's rather embarrassing. He said, we've been looking for 25 years. We've been working in our team. Other teams around the world have been working, too. We haven't been great on collaboration. And we had a new, an ingenue young researcher came to work with us. And after a week, the young researcher said at the tea break, when he was having a biscuit and a cup of coffee, he said, do you mind if I ask a question? I see that we have information that we can't make sense of. But I also see that we're not talking to other teams around the world working in the same area. And I'm wondering, what if they also have information they can't make sense of? But maybe we could all make sense of each other if we shared the information. And he said, and I'm asking myself the question, what's the most important thing here? Is it to find the gene, or is it to be the first to find the gene? Because these are very, very, very different paradigms. And he said they were all embarrassed immediately into saying, well, obviously the most important thing is to find the gene. And they decided there and then that they would put out a call to all the other groups for collaboration. And they met, and he said everybody put on the table what they had. And he said it was embarrassing, but it was also a miracle, because the gene revealed itself. And that is the science working for the common good. Collaboration, partnership, understanding that what I know needs to be shared. What you know needs to be shared if we are all to benefit. So with scientists like this and with values like this, that's our future, a hope-filled future.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It was interesting to note how the reactions of Europeans to the pandemic were very different. In Ireland, apparently, prayer went up. In my country, Belgium, the sale of beer and wine went up. Now, let's move on. Maria Luisa Pancela, excuse me. She was a state secretary for trade, but she was also the Secretary General for Research and Innovation in Spain. So she will look at the role of science from a more governance perspective. Please.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Well, first of all, I would like to say good morning to everyone here present and to those that follow us on streaming. To tell you the truth, I'm really happy to participate in this roundtable, in this fabulous roundtable with so interesting people, because I'm really fascinated with the words that I'm here right now. As Ms. McAllis has said, the global pandemic has been probably the most remarkable times of convergence between science, innovation, and common good. In reality, when we talk about health, it's very easy to have a close relationship between science and welfare. But science is not only for health. When you told me to talk about these topics today, it was not the case at that time when I was preparing my words. But for instance, I have now in my mind the explosion of the volcano in the island of La Palma in Spain. The science that is behind all this information that we had previously of the explosion was fantastic, because scientists could achieve to decide the right place where the volcano was going to explode. And so they were only run in 300 meters. And so they could announce the citizens that were living there, because you have seen on TV that houses and factories are going to be destroyed because of the volcano, but nobody has died because everybody was prevented and so put aside. And every day there are some drones that fly over the crater of the volcano to take pictures and to have information, to attract information of the volcano, to transmit to, for instance, to the Barcelona Scientific Supercomputing Center, in order to say every day how it's going to be the behavior of the volcano. So thanks to this, to fly a drone over the crater is very easy. Only 1,300 degrees, more or less. So new materials, new optics, a lot of things have been developed just to have information of the volcano. So I want to say that science and innovation is working together in order to have a common good. That is the good of the citizens that are living in this island. But if we focus on the pandemic that we are assisting, I would like to say that the European Union has been, in this case, at the forefront of the international efforts to battle and to tackle with this coronavirus. And also is a leadership of Europe, and we have seen here the responsibles, the protagonists of this European leadership in terms of this science and innovation, to be today so comfortable that we don't need to have our mask and to talk freely, because the vaccination has been massively deployed. So the European Union, the European research has been not only important and relevant to go forward with this development of this vaccination, but also with the production, as I said, to have a massive vaccination, not only in Europe, but in the rest of the world as well. And also in research and innovation is essential, or has been essential, to curb the current health crisis and also its socioeconomic consequences, because we need to still be or this effect is still being in the core of the European Union agenda in order to create a more sustainable, a more digital, and more resilient society. And Europe continues facing these challenges of the future today. Pandemic is not gone, still been with us. As far as I know, there are enormous quantity of virus in the future that we need to continue to tackle with them. But one thing that I have perceived during this period is that we were all of us enclosed in our houses. Factories, companies were totally closed, but innovation that was created during this period to be adapted to this new situation was enormous. I can see that, for instance, textile companies start to produce masks. Or automotive companies start to produce respirators, or restaurants that were all of them closed suddenly decided how to transform their services, how introduce digitalization in their restaurants in order to make new services and to do things in a different way. Some of these innovations that were originally temporary, some of them will continue to be temporary, and so they will reverse. But some others are going to stay, are going to be with us. For instance, e-commerce. All of us jump into the e-commerce suddenly like a tsunami during the pandemic. And so this is going to be maintained in the future, and also to force the transformation of the normal commerce in our lives. So in this sense, I would like also to enhance that if digitalization was suddenly entering in our lives, means that pandemic has bring us new skills, the necessity of new skills, the necessity of the development of new technological skills for companies. So employees and professionals during this period has been forced to introduce online services, to use teleconferences to continue working, or to use collaborative platforms as a normal way of working. They enter in, these kind of technologies enter in our lives as a normal thing. Does impact companies because they need to be adapted rapidly just to continue their economic activity. And also, I would like to say that it was very disruptive for many companies. Suddenly, it was not, I remember at that time, it was not freely computers in the market to rent, to have in your house, to have a cyber security in your houses that you had in your companies, but how to maintain this cyber security when all the workers are at home and you need to work in a different way. The cyber attacks were enormous during this period, and Europe need to rapidly adapt their companies in order to maintain the safety of the companies due to this. But also the administration was obliged to do so, because also administration, at that time I was at the administration, we couldn't say, hello, goodbye, we are in pandemic, we close. And citizens, if you need something, let's wait for the past time. No, we continue giving our services to citizens, but in a different way. Imagine, for instance, I was really surprised how hospital, in a certain, very rapidly, changed totally their way of assisting citizens, assisting patients. So the appointments by APPs, or the e-diagnosis, the telemedicine as a whole. So they were transforming the way of doing the normal things and the common goods. So that is giving us the idea that the professional skills are changing. So technological skills are enhancing, but I cannot assess until now how deep this transformation of professional skills are going to be for the future. But it's true that many technologies are entering in our lives rapidly, like a tsunami, like Internet of Things, 5G, big data. All these technologies are here and for the future. So we need to reflect about this, and I know that universities, for instance, they are really in a trouble because they don't know which kind of profiles are going to be necessary for the future. And so that's why they're opening extremely the offer of disciplines, and disciplines when I was at the university, disciplines were totally rigid. That means law, economics, politics, and today are absolutely open in order to give skills to citizens, to students, to see what kind of those skills could be useful for their future, because we don't know how the future is going to demand, which kind of skills the future is going to demand. And so Europe is really prepared for this, is the question. It's true that investing in science, investing in innovation is investing in Europe's future. It's true that since the Single European Act, Europe, or at least the R&D policy of the European Union, was at the beginning focused on strengthening the cooperation among research and technological people, professionals, in order to give scientists and technological basis to our industry to permit them to increase their competitiveness, to try to close the gap of technology, to close the gap between the country leaders. That means the United States and Japan in that period. After the years, we see that even though this policy of the European Union, we don't have closed the gap. The gap between leaders and Europe continues growing. And leaders are not only today the United States and Japan. Today is South Korea, is Australia, is Canada. China is improving very rapidly. And so that's why the European Union has continued changing their R&D policy. And so like this, since the very beginning, since the first framework program, that is the main instrument for the R&D policy of the European Union, they have increasing the budget little by little, changing and reinforcing policies in terms of R&D. So first of all, it was to strengthen bases, scientists and technological basis. After was to strengthen the cooperation, the cross-border cooperation of people, of scientists, in order to coordinate much better activities and policies of the European Union. After, it was the creation of the Europe of knowledge. It was at the Agenda 2000, for instance. It was the main aim of the Agenda 2000. After, that means Article 179 of the treaty says that we need to create a single European research area, and to permit that knowledge and researcher and technological people could flow their knowledge and themselves from one country to another in order to cooperate and collaborate much more. And today, I can say that we have probably the most ambitious program in the world, that is Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe has an enormous budget, 90.5 billion euros, and the pillars in which this budget is going to be developed and is going to be based, the new policy of the European Union, and the European Union, is in open science, open innovation, global challenges like climate change, the lack of energy, new pandemics, and so on, and also the competitiveness of industries. If we match this budget, this program, with next generation program that is being in place to not to have more money to continue doing same things. No, it's just to transform our economy, to transform our companies. If we match both programs, because Next Generation worth 750,000 billion euros. So if we match both programs, we have enough budget to be leaders. It's true that in the technologies that I mentioned before, IoT or 5G and so on, we are not leaders, but we have the best and biggest deployment of fiber optic infrastructure to take advantage of this infrastructure for those technologies in the future. So I would like to close saying that Europe has an important role and programs in innovation to strengthen our society. And so even though this budget, we need to coordinate better our ecosystem and to think that local ecosystem, regional ecosystem, national ecosystem as a whole, in a good collaboration and coordination, we are really strong for the future. Thank you.
There is an important aspect which has not yet been mentioned, education. And for education and science, we have an eminent friend, Professor George Privilakis, who was until recently at the Sorbonne University. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's difficult for me not to say just a few words in Greek.
Yeah, please.
Before I shift to English.
Θα μπορούσατε να ανοίξετε. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to find myself here in Thessaloniki. I believe that this ceremony is an important landmark in the history of Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is a city with enormous history and wealth. Recently, it has started opening up and blossoming and flourishing in order to find its self once again. I believe that the work carried out by Theophanou Foundation is extremely important. I believe that the whole society of Thessaloniki has been supporting the foundation. And I hope that we will be able to meet regularly in order to celebrate important achievements so that Thessaloniki will gain once again the position that it deserves to have among European cities. Αγαπητοί φίλοι, κυρίες και κύριοι,
celebrate an extraordinary achievement. Our two laureates have contributed a solution to a major problem of humanity. But I would like to point out that there is another contribution. They have proven that science counts, that science is very important, and we all feel again about how important is science. At the same time, they have shown that the question of science is not simple. that science cannot be isolated from the rest of our social and cultural life. And what they have described about their hopes, about their difficulties, the way they have connected, collaborated, shows exactly the complexity of the question of science. So science is very important, but we must not take science for granted. And for this, let's go a bit back. I won't take you to the beginning of science in ancient times. I will go back just 1,000 years, when in Italy, the idea of the university was emerging in Bologna, in Padova, and then 2 centuries later, it came to the university where I had the privilege to serve for 4 decades, the Sorbonne. And this idea of the university is based on one of the most important European ideals, which is the freedom of thought and of expression. This is what it was about, the university. And we see in the world of today that this is a battle that we have still to fight. This university, this foundation of Europe, combined science with education and with culture. Of course, at those times, culture was closely related to religion. But we have those 3 components which were associated. And I consider that this association is the most important thing. First of all, because there are linkages, there are obvious synergies, we know about them. If you don't have an educated public, you cannot sustain research and science. On the contrary, an uneducated public can destroy what you are trying to do. It is also our practice as professors and researchers. We know very well how, when we teach, we conceptualize, and what we conceptualize, then we can transmit in teaching. So we have a lot. I don't want to go on a list of those connections and synergies, but I think they are known and obvious. There is another aspect which I consider more important, even more important, and this is that knowledge, which is produced by science, means power. Knowledge gives power. And this power has to be limited, controlled, mitigated. And this is where education and culture come in. If we have an educated public, this public will limit the bad use of knowledge. Culture gives the possibility to humanize the results of science. So this mix is important, but this mix at certain moments was destroyed, broken. And the story of science in the 19th and the 20th century is not always very nice. With the Industrial Revolution, the child of science, which was technology, gave an enormous power to the European nations, and this power has not been used always in the best possible way. It has been used to wage war, to dominate, and so we have the dark sides of the European history, this dark continent. Sometimes. So we see that this power can be used against or towards the control of the populations. We have seen that in the history of Europe, and we hope that we have overcome that. After the 2 wars that ruined Europe, we decided to create to go into the European project, and we are very proud of the results. Now, it's also another aspect is that this power of technology can be used not only towards societies, but also towards nature, towards the environment. This is the other surprise that we have had during the last decades, the results of another kind of hybris, of this arrogance given by technology. We find out that we are in front of a major environmental crisis. And again, of course, it is the poison that must become the medicine, the pharmacon, which is both poison and medicine science. We are addressing ourselves to the science in order to cope with this problem. This is a major challenge for humanity, major challenge for Europe. Why can Europe which offered the answer to the hybris concerning the use of technology towards people, why does Europe have a comparative advantage? I believe because in other places, in other continents, this unity between education, science, and culture exists much less. The tendency towards immediate results, the tendency towards specialization, the tendency towards fragmentation is strong in other continents. We have it in Europe because we have been influenced by those trends. But I think that Europe has shown a lot of resilience. We are still in the context of the old European university. And for this reason, I think that we have a mission, an important mission, in renewing our approach towards science, education, and culture in the sense of re-establishing the links, the connections, the unity between the three. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, our last panelist will talk about science and well-being. We all want to lead a good life. How can science help us with that? Professor Chiara Sanaceno of the University of Turin, maybe you have some answers.
As the common good, exactly what the well-being is controversial, open to discussion, and actually should be the outcome of an agreement process of people being involved in deciding what the well-being is. But going back to the role of science to well-being, and to start with, certainly one cannot deny that the role of science in improving the well-being in terms, for instance, of survival, of being protected from illnesses, so has been huge, but not only in this field. I'm thinking, I'm a sociologist of the family, among other things, and of course in everyday life, science has been very important in improving the domestic life, for instance, electricity, the washing machine, and so on, have been very, very important. So, yes, and just going back to medicine, infant mortality has been curbed, at least in our rich world, not everywhere, but we are getting there. We live longer and, to some degree, better lives. many illnesses which once were prone to quick death now have been under control and can even be cured, not all of them, but still. We are now celebrating the two the two persons who found a way out of the pandemic through the vaccine, but we should not forget that just in these days, somebody has found, or at least it's beginning to find, the vaccine against malaria, which is not the pandemic we are knowing of, but is a pandemic in other parts of the world, and children are dying because of in thousands because of malaria. So certainly, yes. At the same time, those very improvements are also to some degree changing the profile of our society. I mean, we live longer, but it means that we are becoming older societies. So they are changing how the society is composed of. Reproductive technologies are opening the possibility to have a child to people who, for centuries, could not. They could adopt, or but they could not. But this is opening up new ethical problems which we never thought about. I'm not saying this is bad, but I'm saying that the changes, even the good changes, you spoke about the dark side of science. I am speaking of the positive side of science. But the very changes which science is affecting in our lives, in our opportunities, are also posing problems, or new ethical or even philosophical problems, which cannot be addressed only through hard science. So, I mean, which call for the involvement also of other disciplines. I don't know whether we can call them sciences, but certain other disciplines. So but even within the very health system, this is clear. For instance, the combination of medicine with ITC, with the digitalization, is opening huge possibilities, for instance, for the frail old to live autonomous life, for people with disability to live autonomous life. But they are also opening up the risk that since they do not need to be cared for hands-on, maybe they become isolated. In some countries where the ITC is very much implemented in the case of the frail old or of the people with disability, they are starting now to discuss the risks of isolation, how you can substitute. I mean, you do not need maybe any longer people feeding you in some cases, but you need somebody to talk to, who listens to you, and which before, without this technology, maybe it could be the same person. But then and it was taken as given that the same person who fed you maybe talked to you or listened to you or acted as if she was listening to you. But now we have this new problem. So, and this is an issue. So there are new problems, and I'm not saying it in a negative way. I'm just saying it, I mean, we are, through science, not only through science, but through science, we are changing the world we are living in it, and the people who live in this world. But then maybe even new philosophical thought or new ethical thinking, new social relations have to be devised or thought about or reflected upon. But then there is also another side where what I would call multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary effort is needed, even within the health system, at least in the developed, rich world. In the poorer world, the real problem is to bring there all these new invention, new possibilities, new opportunities which science produces. And this is an ethical problem in addition to a material problem of bringing it there. But in our own world, epidemiological and sociological research is indicating that in order to be in good health, is not enough to have a well-developed medicine. You need, first of all, to have access to a well-developed medicine, so for instance, the public system instead of a totally private system, but also you need to live in, you need to have a life which is with dignity, for instance, which gives you acknowledgement of your value, gives you meaning. I was very impressed by a recent book by Deaton and Cass, two economists. Deaton is a Nobel Prize, and it's called Despair and the Future of Capitalism. It's about the poor white class in the United States. Well, it says that, and they are dying. I mean, there is an epidemic of early dying in this poor white lower middle class in the United States. And their explanation is not that they are the poorest of the poor. It's not poverty in itself, but is the fact that they're losing out. And they're losing out even the meaning, their position in society, their hope toward the future, and so on. And so, for instance, suicide increases, but also the consumption of opium-linked medicine, which apparently is very accessible in the United States, which is a problem also of science or pharma enterprises. So exactly, so you need a good well-developed medicine, but also you need a well-developed society, a more just society. Another field of research where this link is apparent, and which is a field where I am working a lot, is that of inequality among children since birth. That is, neurological research and biological research has shown that the impact of poverty and deprivation on children's brains, it's scary, on children's brains, even before they are born. So there is an impact of poverty even in how you are born, with what chances in terms of being able to develop yourself, indicating the need to address the economic and social circumstances of women during pregnancy, for instance. So you have to start, and then when the children are born. So it's not only an issue of medicine, but it's an issue of social relation, of social circumstances, of justice. In another field, which has apparently nothing to do with health, but it has a lot also to do with health, is the environmental, somebody mentioned the environmental crisis, where the need for a better coordination of different disciplinary approaches emerges clearly, because environmental protection and restoration requires the coordination of efforts in physics, biology, engineering, and many other hard sciences. But it also requires, in order to not to produce social exclusion or alienation and even impoverishment of some social groups, careful analysis, economic and social, of the short, middle, and long-term effects of our environmental choices, even pro-environment choices. And also needs to develop resources to reorient and retrain those who risk being negatively affected. Innovation in designing new forms of social protection, which are not even. And also, in order to recruit citizens in the needed efforts to change, and we see it also in the pandemic, which is not, not only those who are against the vaccine, they are not only anti-science. Some of them are just scared. Some of them just know what will happen. Why should I put something in my body I don't know anything about? Or who is behind this? So and you cannot just persuade them evocating the priority of science, because if they cannot be persuaded, it's not enough to say that science says this. So we need also the contribution of other disciplines, psychology, communication, education, of course. But so the two things, as my colleague said before me, without education, but I would say without active involvement of citizens, it is difficult even to promote science as such, as a good thing. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to apply that conclusion, the active involvement of citizens. This is now the time for questions and comments to the panels, to the panel expert. I propose the following procedure. You just raise your hand as usual. You will have a minute or two to ask a precise question or just a very short comment. I'm going to be a little rigid on the 2 minutes because time is short and I want to have as many people as possible to have the floor. And then one or a couple of the panelists to whom you address your question has also 2 minutes to answer. Maybe 3 in your case, but not more. Who is first? Yes, please. Yeah, wait for a microphone to arrive. You can speak either Greek or English.
My question for the two scientists is how the two groups, BioNTech and Moderna, almost synchronized their, let's say, performance and results and arrive in the result so soon with about the same technology.
Yes, both companies have a similar, or we both have mRNA technology. However, one has to be aware of the fact that this does not mean that what has been used is identical. mRNA technology is a basket and there are different shades in it. So technologies are different, they differ from each other. And we both companies, as also all others who were in the race against the virus, speeded up as good as they could. And mRNA technology as such has the advantage that it can be much faster than others because, for example, production technologies are faster. They have shorter turnaround times. The technology as such is more versatile. And that was the reason why the mRNA technologies were the front runners from all the vaccines.
Thank you.
Yes, please. The lady over there. The two ladies there, over there.
Ειρήνη Αναστασοπούλου από την Ελληνική Υπηρεσία της Deutsche
Deutsche Welle agency. I would like to ask
Ο Dr. Sahin μίλησε για ένα θαύμα, για ένα επιστημονικό θαύμα.
miracle. Do you feel disappointed when you listen and you hear that there are still people opposed to vaccination? There are people who deny being vaccinated. And the second question, when do you think that this pandemic will end?
Questions. One was, are we disappointed that not everyone is vaccinated? The answer is short, no, we are not disappointed. So the vaccination campaigns are still ongoing, and we know that this is a process in which everyone needs to come to a conclusion. Some people have a strong conclusion not to be vaccinated, other people didn't came up with strong conclusions, but are hesitant. And I think it's our societal task to try to convince everyone that vaccination is better, has a better risk profile than being infected. So that's just our task. The second is when will the pandemic end? So it is again the question of definition. How do you define pandemic? So the virus is with us and will stay with us at least the next years. This is not just like an influenza virus which comes and disappears. This is a more stable virus. And the question is, when do we feel that we are not anymore in a pandemic? That is more the right question. And I believe we could go back to almost normal life next year after spring, when we have a situation where most people are vaccinated here in Europe or are immune by infection, and this virus will stay with us, and it is quite possible that revaccinations are needed to keep up with the immunity, but I believe no one at that time will be scared anymore at the level that is happening still today, yeah? because most severe cases should be prevented by the immune status.
Thank you. Micro over there. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Eleni Varvitsiotti. I'm a journalist with the Financial Times. It's a question for Dr. Sahin and Turecci here. And my question is if you feel pressure from the US government to share the recipe of the vaccine, and if opening the patent would actually increase vaccinations, rate of vaccinations in lower income countries.
Pressure from anyone. There are the discussions about patent waivers, and we are actively engaging also in these discussions because we think it's very important to educate that yes, everyone who is asking for a patent waiver is doing this because they want to ensure and enable equality of access to the vaccine. But patent waivers are not the right way to this grand mission and high goal. It's actually the contrary. They would harm this path. What we are doing and what we feel is the right way to ensure this equality of distribution we all want to have is to, on the one side, also produce for those places here on Earth which don't have access yet. On the second, to build at those places in those regions manufacturing facilities and train people there and help them to, at some point, take over manufacturing themselves. These are complex technologies with 50,000 individual steps until you have a vaccine. You need know-how for this. And starting to try to build something based on something which is written on paper can only result in low-quality vaccines which could even harm people.
Over there, then it's your turn.
Thank you, and congratulations to all, to the award winners, to the participants to this panel, and of course to the organizers for this wonderful event. My name is Dimitris Keridis. I'm a native of Thessaloniki, but I'm elected for the parliament in Athens. It's always great to be back. I have tens of questions to ask, but if I were to limit myself, I would say at least 2 or 3. First, what would you say to the science deniers, the anti-vacciners? What would your message be, both in regards to the vaccine, but in general, the science deniers that we have in other issues, equally important, if not more, like climate change, for example? And what is your take on the politicization of science that we see a lot these days? Because there is this connection between science and politics, for sure, and science alone is not enough. Second, your personal trajectory is very interesting and very tempting to ask to you about a comment on the freedom of expression. We see many academics around the world and in Europe, in the periphery of Europe, in neighboring countries to us, to be fired, to be in prison, to be exiled. I wonder if you have a comment in that. And thirdly, finally, what is the answer to the question of the role of the market in science research? What is the right balance between state sponsoring, the market? We have the CEO, a Thessaloniki native, a great son of Thessaloniki, Mr. Bourla, in our midst, heading a multinational big pharma company. I wonder what is your take on this right balance that is very much of concern for us politicians, for sure. Thank you. And thank you for being with us.
Let's start with the Let's start with the mix of politics and science. And my dear friend Albert had great challenges when we were developing the vaccine. So we were in Europe, we were more safe, yeah? And in the United States there were of course more pressure. And Albert came up with the idea of a pledge, yeah? To make very clear, yeah? And that the development of vaccines is based on science and based on transparency. And this is the only way to go. If you mix up opinions and politics and science, you can't be scientific. Science is free of politics. Science is free of opinions that are not validated. Science must act with the rules of testing hypotheses and validating what you think by data. And the only thing which helps is being transparent. So you can't just say, I have proven, you have to show that you have proven. And that's the way that we have seen here. And to be honest, I am really proud about being a member of the scientific community, because the scientific community delivered in a way in this pandemic with this type of transparency by creating data and publishing it within a few days and having this public debate. So that is, I think, the only way to go. And I take the third question because I forgot the second one. What is the right mix between between public and private research? I think we need a mix, and we have to see, we need to combine the best of two worlds. The best in the academic world is really the absolute freedom of thought, the direction of research. If you are a professor in the university, you can really do research, yeah. And if you have funding, you can do what you want, yeah. And this really creates sometimes crazy ideas, yeah. And people are researching, and no one understands in which direction it is going to happen. And sometimes 5, 10, 15 years later, it turned out that this was an extremely important piece of research. And that is what is needed, because when we started 20 years earlier with mRNA, people didn't enthusiastically celebrate us, yeah? Because we were doing mRNA. They said, this is a little bit weird, yeah? But they tolerated us that we did that. But we need, on the other side, the word of pharmaceutical development, and the best example of such a pharmaceutical development, that's the other end, it's Pfizer, yeah. So the way how they execute clinical trials, yeah, this is really impressive. This can never be done in an academic setting. It is so professional. Everyone is acting in a extremely diligent manner, quality controlled, and everything is planned with statistical analysis plans. And there's something in between this academic research and the pharmaceutical research, and this is biotech, yeah. And you need biotech because you need companies investing into ideas which are too early for pharma, yeah. And biotech is taking up and validating novel technologies until they can be used at a large scale. So we need all three ingredients.
Thank you. Yeah, you have a question? Yes, and then over there. You come first. So, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. My name is Ben Sasson. I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Poncela. You mentioned, like the Commissioner also, the 90 billion going into funding of research. In your opinion, is the money or structural issues that stop Europe getting into the leadership league? Structural issues, of course, like the ones from which the people being awarded today have broken out of.
My opinion is that till now, probably the budget of the European Union was too fragmented. The main budget was in hands of the different countries, and it was not too much collaboration among the different countries. The European Union, the budget of the R&D policy of the European Union started to grow from the very beginning since the 1980s till now extraordinary, because before the budget of the European Union was short and the budget of the nations was big, and they do their own. Today is more coordinated. Today the budget, I think, is the second biggest budget of the European Union. The agricultural policy first and later R&D policy. So that means that apart this budget of the European Union, the budget of the different unions, of the different members, coordinating all of this makes sense that we will have a common big budget in Europe to go forward. This is the aim. Let's see if we achieve.
Thank you. My name is Christos Galileas. I'm the artistic director of the Thessaloniki Concert Hall. So welcome. It's our pleasure to be able to host such an important event. And congratulations, of course, on your groundbreaking research. We are all deeply indebted. My question is, it seems that science is making huge strides. And I wanted to ask the distinguished panel, are we intellectually capable of keeping up with this pace? Thank you very much.
That's a tricky one.
I start with a quote of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain me like I am a 6-year-old boy, okay, then something is wrong. And I think it's our task as scientists to explain the things in a way that people can understand it.
Very wise answer. Thank you. The last question was, where?
The second one.
Sorry. Here? This gentleman.
Yeah. But there is also a question there.
I'm Vasilis Konstantinidis, and we've met many of you. I have 2-3 things to say. First, we have many professors over there, and I would like to draw your attention that something very important to have better research, analysis, and education is to have better educational system, and especially in the universities, where I'm talking also mainly for our, but I think also for some other in Europe. So I would like to have some answer to this, also from the governing part, which is not exactly over there of EU. The second one is that I know that you're working on cancer, and we wish you the best of luck and success, but if you know anything which is very important for the whole world regarding research in development for vaccine or whatever else, we will be happy to hear. And third, congratulations to Pfizer and to you, because the fast fish is the slow one and not the big one, the small one. You did very quickly, and you mentioned that, and thank you for measuring as well. Thank you.
I got just the congrats. I didn't get the question. I'm sorry.
What else besides cancer, maybe you're working on, you or the other researchers?
Yeah.
I want to give you a chance to say to the other people, because this is very important.
Yes, there are various areas we are working on with RNA, but also with other immune therapies. The common theme in our research is to use what the immune system has developed over millions of years of evolution and to repurpose it. And one way is with vaccines. Areas in which we are working are cancer, infectious diseases, not only COVID and infectious diseases. We just have started to work on malaria because we think what we have learned with the COVID-19 vaccine technologically, and also the manufacturing facilities we will build in those countries. We talked about it. We built in those countries in which also malaria, HIV, TBC are a problem, are a good lever for that. So malaria is a topic. Other diseases are autoimmune diseases. mRNA technology is like a wanted poster. For vaccines, cancer and infectious disease vaccines, we deliver this wanted poster of a cancer cell or of a pathogen, and we deliver the instruction to attack. In autoimmune diseases, we can change the language of mRNA, and we can deliver the wanted poster and the information, the instruction not to attack those parts of the body autoimmunity is attacking. And this is, for example, useful for multiple sclerosis.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are arriving to closing time of our roundtable. It's difficult to summarize such a rich debate. May I suggest a few points we take home? And do not just take home, but that we spread the word around us. I think we can go away with the conviction that we need science and scientists, and that they need our support and our defense when science is attacked. I think we need to understand and we need to facilitate the value chain from science to business, because it's business which can produce something useful with the research of science, with the research results of scientists. It's they who can bring it to the market and to the citizens, from which we then benefit for our health or other forms of well-being. Or we concentrated today on health, but there is clearly the issue of climate change and other issues, as you mentioned. The third thing we should take home is that we should not just we should look at the alpha and beta sciences in parallel and in interdependence. Because, as several panel experts have said, there are issues which influence the role of science, such as inequality. And that is something we should not forget in our societies. Because very often, the anti-vaccine attitude is born not really out of an anti-scientific attitude, but out of an antagonism for other reasons. And the fourth thing we should take home is the important role of governance. We can see in Europe that, in particular, local governments have a higher degree of efficiency than governments at higher level. Of course, the complexity rises all the time till you reach the level of the state or the European Union, which is in itself a complex experimental system of governance. Here again, finding solutions to facilitate research, to facilitate this value chain, requires research about the methods of governance, the methods of cooperation, the use of digital technologies. I realize this is a very unsatisfactory summary, but at least I hope it's something simple to take home. Thank you very much for being with us.